Welcome everyone to the beautiful city of Edinburgh, Scotland. You can see there's all sorts of cool buildings. The architecture here is really fantastic. I am here not for any business or anything like that, but purely because I had not been here since I was 10 months old, which is, early enough in life to not remember what it was like. And so wanted to come back and check. I remember back in 2005, I was on a trip to Prague from Munich, and I ran into somebody on the train who described the architecture in Edinburgh, Scotland as being some of the most amazing in the world. And so I had to come and check it out, which by good fortune and pure luck, it happens to be the Fringe Festival on at the moment, and so we get the added benefit of being able to observe the Fringe. And I would have loved to show you guys the area around Edinburgh Castle. It's like this extraordinary view, very, very cool. However, it's really busy there, and so not optimal for filming, and also quite noisy. But so I'm here in a park surrounded by beautiful buildings, and down that way there is people twirling fire things, and yeah, lots of interesting stuff. So this will be the setting for our video today. I recommend people come and check it out. It's great. The Fringe Festival is great. Granted, lots of wokeness on display, and I'm very not about wokeness. But with that being said, really excellent performers, insane volume of stuff here. There is, well, to put some context, yesterday I went to look up to see shows to go to, and take a guess at how many shows there were in a single day. 1,974 of them in a day. So very difficult to go through all the available options, but really great that there is so much to check out. So the downside is it is a little bit cold. I've got my cool DeFi Yield hoodie on here, and so it's keeping me warm, which is great. And anyway, so we will dive in. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about the subject of why I sold all of my Bitcoin recently. Now, some context on this. This is definitely not a recommendation that other people should sell their Bitcoin or should not buy Bitcoin. But recently I just sold all the Bitcoin that I'd had. I'd kind of famously sold out of Bitcoin in January 2021, sort of at early on in the bull market, based on the idea that in a bull market, the assets would tend to, like the Bitcoin dominance chart would tend to drop. And because of this, it basically means that your returns would be less optimal in Bitcoin versus some other things. And so that was the decision. And then kind of over time, I'd acquired some other Bitcoin positions, and since just sold it. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about why, and I think there's like an interesting investing lesson there for anyone who is interested. So we will dive in and discuss. Would love to hear what you guys are investing in at the moment. It's something that I've been spending a fair amount of time on, just because I had a fair amount of cash on the sidelines and wanted to figure out where to allocate it. I think prices have come down a lot on a lot of things, so it kind of made a lot of sense to put a bunch of effort into that over the last little while. Anyway, we'll discuss the reasons here. Put the comments that you guys have below. I'm sure there'll be a bunch of Bitcoin lovers who will say that it's a terrible idea and all this kind of thing, and that is per the Bitcoin religion, which I will discuss as well as we go on. Anyway, for those of you who would like help with relocating abroad, all over the world, we help people get residencies and citizenships. I've moved to a bunch of different countries myself, and we've helped clients in over 50 countries kind of set up internationally, relocate abroad, do international tax planning, form companies, opening bank accounts, paying the lowest legal amount of tax possible, investing around the world, etc. If you'd like help with any of that stuff, you can reach out to us, calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer. There's a link in the description below if you want to book a call with me, or you can send a message through our website, offshorecitizen.net. Okay, so let's talk about Bitcoin. So a few caveats here. Which way should I go? We'll go over here. Anyway, yeah, so a few caveats. The first is, by no means is this a statement that I think that Bitcoin is going to go down. I think, when Bitcoin was at 69,000, maybe that was a really likely time for it to go down. It's conceivable, not certain, but conceivable that 17,600 was the bottom. Conceivable, not guaranteed, but conceivable that we will see upside action from here. And certainly, I think there's a reasonable argument that can be made that Bitcoin over the next, 10 years will outperform the S&P 500, may do some fairly decent returns. And in fact, if I was to think purely from, we have to cross the street here, purely from a risk weighted basis, meaning the chance of minimizing your downside plus maximizing your upside, looking at both perspectives, I think that what you would find is that actually it was probably a relatively good option for a lot of people. That being said, for me personally, I'm willing to take on a greater degree of risk in the pursuit of what I think will hopefully be higher returns. And I think there are some things that are fundamentally different about kind of this cycle in crypto versus some other cycles in crypto. And so as a result, I made this decision recently. Now, I think that the thing to understand at the basis of this concept is that I found myself not really particularly enjoying the maximalist group. So, in other words, there are a group of Bitcoin maximalists, people who basically refer to everything else as a shitcoin. I think it's pretty ignorant and stupid. And the reason is basically that they sort of view Bitcoin as one basic thing and don't recognize that all these other things are potentially something different. And so they see them as kind of direct competition, and there's a weird tribalism and kind of a weird religion around the beliefs. It's very dogmatic. And so I often kind of poke at those people and kind of argue the other sides, which I think is pretty legitimate. We're just here near the university, anyway. And you can see actually, let's see here, over there you go. You can see these people spinning torches and things, doing some cool fire spinning stuff per the Fringe Festival. Very cool. Anyway, yeah, so there's that. And I started as I would kind of challenge this, and the most fundamental argument that I would make is this, which I've mentioned in some previous videos. Okay, imagine that I care about value accrual, okay, which as an investor I do. So let's just quickly cover a few things. So a lot of people will criticize other tokens in favor of Bitcoin as saying, oh, hey, well, people are going to get richer because there's early participants. Bitcoin had a quote-unquote fair launch. How much that is true, arguable, but you can make that argument that it's more of a quote-unquote fair launch than some other technologies or some other tokens out there. And you could say this is good, and so they're worried about Cantillon effect. I think Cantillon effect exists in Bitcoin anyway as well, but that's a whole other conversation. But they'll make these types of arguments. And these types of arguments, I think, are maybe okay if you're trying to take an idealistic position, meaning if you're not concerned about investment returns, right? If you're just saying, hey, listen, I have a certain particular belief, and that belief is based on a view that Bitcoin has a better monetary policy, which is hence better for the world, etc., then okay, great. That's an idealistic reason for buying. When I invest, I'm not investing idealistically. I'm investing purely based on investment returns. And I'm not going to go and buy something typically that I think is going to underperform because I like the ideology behind it. It's just, I think those two things are kind of separate. I will spend my own money in building things that I think are good, and that is a separate item from what I will invest in. And I think I debated this with somebody years ago because I was looking at the possibility of investing in Monsanto, and they were very critical of Monsanto. And I'm like, look, here's the reality. Either you're going to get the returns from it or somebody else will get the returns from it. It's not like the money is going to the company anyway. It's a situation where the money is being exchanged within the fair market, and if the best deal you can invest in is Monsanto, then take the gains, dump it on somebody else who, maybe ideologically believes it, and then use the profits that you made to go and do what you think is valuable in the world. So I kind of look at it in a similar regard here, that I'm not concerned about the ideology, I'm just concerned about the returns. And when I think about value accrual, because the whole idea is, okay, Bitcoin's going to accrue this value, I think to myself, well, hang on a minute. If I can hold another proof of stake token, and by the way, I don't think that cash will outperform Bitcoin over the next while, so I'm not taking that position. The idea is to take the money and put it into something that I think will perform better over the next while. But let's say I can buy a proof of stake token, okay, where I literally can get paid to hold it, okay, versus I can hold this other thing where I don't get paid to hold it. Okay, well, that seems kind of like I would rather hold the thing that I can get paid to hold. That seems just better to me. And then the corollary of that is that somebody else is probably also going to feel the same way. And because they're also going to feel the same way, there's look at these cool buildings here. Let's see, we'll maybe see if we can walk past here. Don't want to too much disrupt people on this trail, but anyway. Yeah, so if other people are also going to make the same decision, then that's going to drive those assets up more relative to the thing that's not paying me to hold it. And that just makes it really hard to argue that the value accrual is going to be better in Bitcoin than in these other things. And so that's kind of my first basic notion. Look at how awesome these buildings are. They're very cool. Very, very cool. I like them a lot. Yeah, very nice. Anyway, so yeah, so that's the first thing. Now, the second thing is that I kind of asked myself, okay, well, why is it that I would hold this thing? And it seems to me that I and a lot of other people hold it partially because of social pressure. And I hate the idea of holding something because of social pressure. I think it's a really dumb idea. So in other words, there's two ways that we can make an investment decision. We can do it based on some sort of conviction and thesis that comes from us, or we can do it based on some other people have kind of projected that idea forward. And I always think it's a bad idea to do it based on what somebody else is projecting forward. It's much better to do your own research, come up with your own belief, and then invest based on your own belief. And your belief might be that Bitcoin is the best thing to invest in. Hey, fair enough. If that's what you think, no problems. Go ahead and do it. But I was noticing that I wasn't doing it because I thought, hey, listen, this is the best. It was more like, well, maybe it will take off. Maybe I'll be wrong. So ergo, I'm going to hold some of this on that basis. And I don't like that idea. So I decided to re-examine my own position and think to myself, well, what do I actually think? What is my assessment of what's going on here? And the first one is what I kind of mentioned, right? About this thing of value accrual and how value accrual is going to come more to something that I get paid to hold, and I have lower risk on that basis than something that I don't get paid to hold. The second is I thought, okay, well, what would cause it to go up? And how does that compare to anything else? So I personally think that as a monetary policy, it's terrible. I do not believe in the Bitcoin monetary policy as a good monetary policy. I think it's a terrible idea. There's lots of reasons why. I just don't think that that's going to be very viable. And I've talked a little bit about this on some previous videos, such as explaining why gold became money and things like this, right? So then what's the next idea? Well, the next idea would be that maybe you have some belief that there's something intrinsic about this asset that's going to outperform, but fundamentally it's about people buying it, right? So if people are not buying it, it's not going to do well. So the question then is, who's going to buy it in enough degree to make it perform well? Now, one thing is, as I mentioned, it's one of at least three major religions within crypto. So the other two being Cardano and Hex. These two are very religion-like, right? Meaning that you have a lot of dogmatism, typically around some sort of some underlying philosophy or leader, okay? And behavior that is extra rational, I guess I would call it. So in other words, it's not just about fundamentals there. There may be fundamentals, but there is more to it than that, which is like this very ardent support. And I think that has some merit to invest in, because people you think if you could buy the Catholic shares in the Catholic Church back in 1500 or in 1000 AD, would that be a good idea? Probably it would be, So similarly, okay, if you can buy into the Bitcoin religion right now, is that a good return? Well, probably there will be some sort of appreciation that comes into that. But it needs to go up a lot in order to be really attractive and exciting. And so the question is, well, what will drive this major price increase? And the answer is institutions investing, right? So, okay, great, institutions investing. Now, we've seen Tesla notably bought, however, they just sold most of their Bitcoin in the last quarter. So, you know, that's not super great. MicroStrategy is kind of their own thing. You've got clearly some big investors who have been buying some portion of their wealth there. And there's a conceivable possibility that over time, some other companies will as well. I've kind of made the thesis for including a small share of Bitcoin in treasury management strategies to offset, say, bonds from a risk parity standpoint, and how that can make some sense. I think that there's some truth to that. I think that realistically, it is pretty likely that Bitcoin has relatively low risk overall in the next, let's call it 10 years, because you can control it yourself. This network is very robust. It's extremely unlikely to change. You do have this kind of narrative which is building and a search for some sort of an alternative asset, which Bitcoin really uniquely solves. So in other words, because of the fact, we've got some sort of flies, because Bitcoin fairly uniquely doesn't have things like management risk like companies do, you're not going to buy Apple shares in the same way ideologically that you're going to buy something like Bitcoin. Bitcoin is more like a bond than it is like a share of another company. And that's fairly unique, right? So, okay, that's, you know, I could see the argument for why this might happen. But what are the other considerations that we may have in this scenario? Well, the next thing is Bitcoin fair, because, you know, why not some other token, right? And the main reason for not some other token is to do with the stability of it. In other words, the monetary policy of Bitcoin has been extremely stable and is likely to remain extremely stable for quite a while, partially because of the religion, partially because of the decentralized nature of it, partially because of kind of the way that it is put together. It's pretty unlikely to have the monetary policy of Bitcoin change. This is probably the key competitive advantage compared to anything else. Ethereum has there's a lot of reasons to believe Ethereum is superior as a store of value, superior in terms of overall performance. It's, you know, superior in terms of security in some regards. You can argue that depending on which type of attack vector you're looking at, but there's lots of reasons to look at some of these. But Ethereum's monetary policy has changed continually, like a lot of times, and will probably continue to change. So then you can think, okay, well, I don't really have a lot of certainty as a major institutional investor or somebody managing a corporate treasury as to what that monetary policy will be. And that introduces risk that for what I'm trying to do in terms of treasury management and wealth preservation doesn't really fit. So hence, I would rather be holding Bitcoin than that. Fair enough. So if this happens, if you actually do get a large amount of institutional capital start flowing in to Bitcoin, the price of Bitcoin should go up a lot, right? We're talking at least an order of magnitude, maybe 2 orders of magnitude, something in and around that degree. It will not replace all the bonds. It will not replace all the gold. It will not replace all the real estate or all the stocks. I mean, like, it fundamentally serves a different purpose. But it could be a lot of extra capital, which could drive prices up a lot, okay? So, okay, well, isn't that a lotto ticket that's worth holding for? And to me, the reason why I think no is because I don't see that being imminent. I think that narrative is there, and I think there's a possibility that 5 years from now, that is the case. But I think over the next 12 to 24 months, it's pretty unlikely. I don't see the US dollar crashing or, you know, confidence in the US dollar being demolished to the point where companies, et cetera, are abandoning it. I don't see bonds being so destroyed. I don't see inflation running rampant. I don't see, like, a lot of these different things that are conceivably concerns. I just don't see showing up in that time frame. And because of that, I think that Bitcoin is essentially going to perform like a large cap venture capital investment where it takes so much more money to drive it up, and it's less sexy than the competitors, and I don't get paid to hold it, that as a result, it's probably just not going to be as high performing. And so hence, I decided to sell it in favor of buying something else. And there is a reasonable chance that in the next 6 to 18 months, I may buy it back. I think there's certain times, like I think one thing that Bitcoin is fairly well is a somewhat hedge against other crypto, because it tends to go down a little less. I mean, really, the only thing I think that maybe went down less in this last little period was BNB token, and that's a whole other conversation. I do own some BNB token, but I think that for the time being, Bitcoin is likely to have subpar performance, and the dynamics underneath it are less attractive than some other assets, and therefore, for me, I would rather hold those other assets than Bitcoin. So anyway, we'd love to hear what you guys think. Those are my comments and the thing that went in to making the decision. Like I said, I wanted to make a decision that was pretty much based on kind of my own conviction, not based on anybody else's social pressure or thesis or something like that. And so maybe I'll share my thesis on some other assets that I think will perform likely better, or comparable, but with some superior pieces in the sense that they can earn yield along the way over the next, call it 12-ish months or something like that. And we will see how the market progresses in the future. I hope you guys are doing great, and give the video a thumbs up, share it with your friends. I will see you on the next video.